9 weeks ago, I gave my father my kidney, and at dinner, they thanked my sister for saving his life.
My name is Ava Carter, and for most of my life, I felt like a background character in my own family. I'm 31. I work at a small nonprofit that helps first-generation students get into college. It's not glamorous, and it definitely doesn't pay much, but I love it. I live alone in a tiny apartment about 20 minutes from my parents' house, not that I'm invited there often. My older sister, Natalie, is everything I'm not, at least according to my mother. She's successful, polished, and deeply involved in my father's medical supply company. 6-figure salary, perfect family, 2 kids, big suburban house, and my mother's full attention. Me? I'm the one who gets forgotten birthday cards, the one seated at the far end of the table, the one people assume drifted away. But I didn't drift away. I was quietly pushed out. It got so bad that by 2024, I stopped attending family gatherings altogether. Holidays, birthdays, company events, I skipped them all. Not out of anger, but because it hurt less to stay away than to sit there and feel invisible. Then everything changed on a random night in July. I wasn't even supposed to know. I was sitting on my couch eating leftover pasta when my phone buzzed, a message from my cousin. "Your dad collapsed. They're taking him to the hospital." That's how I found out. Not from my mother, not from my sister, from a text. I rushed to the hospital, heart pounding, mind racing. When I arrived, I saw them, my mother and Natalie, sitting together, whispering like I wasn't even part of the family. When my mom looked up and saw me, she didn't look relieved. She looked annoyed. I sat down a few chairs away, waiting, listening. Eventually, a doctor came out and spoke directly to them. Stage 4 kidney failure. He needed a transplant, fast. Family members would be tested. I wasn't included in that conversation, not even considered. Later that night, when I finally saw my dad, he reached for my hand, his voice weak. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. That's when I realized something chilling. They had been telling him I didn't care, that I chose distance, that I wasn't there. I squeezed his hand and said something I meant with everything in me. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The next morning, without telling anyone, I made a decision. I called the hospital. I want to get tested as a donor. No announcement, no discussion. Just action. A week later, I got the call. I was a match. Not just a match. A perfect one. I sat in my car, shaking, staring at my phone. Relief, fear, and something else. A quiet voice in my head asking, if I do this, will they finally see me? But what I didn't know was someone in my own family was already trying to stop me. And the truth behind that would change everything.
When I told my family I was a match, the reaction wasn't what you'd expect. There was no relief, no gratitude, no emotional moment, just silence. We were sitting in my parents' living room when I said it. I got tested. I'm a compatible donor. My father looked stunned, almost overwhelmed, but before he could say anything, my mother spoke. "You went behind our backs?" Her voice was sharp, controlled, disapproving. "I wanted to be sure first," I said quietly. Natalie crossed her arms. "I was planning to get tested too." It didn't sound true. It sounded convenient. The room felt tense, like I had done something wrong instead of offering to save a life. Finally, my dad spoke. "If she's willing, and she's a match, I don't want to wait." That should have settled it, but my mother wasn't done. "We can find someone else," she said. "A friend, a colleague, someone more stable." I blinked. "Stable?" She looked straight at me. "You've never followed through on anything difficult in your life." That hit harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because she believed it. Or maybe she needed to believe it. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stood up and left. But that night, my dad called me. "If you're sure," he said, "then I trust you." That was all I needed. A few days later, my sister called me, something she rarely did. "I've been thinking, since you're donating, I want to help." I paused. "How?" "I'm organizing a fundraiser, something big. Awareness, donations, media coverage. We can turn this into something positive." It sounded good on the surface. Too good. "Will it mention the donation?" I asked. "Of course," she said quickly. "It's about family." But something in her tone felt off, like she was already shaping a story, and I wasn't at the center of it. A week later, I searched the event online. There it was, a polished page, a professional campaign, my sister's name everywhere, and mine? Nowhere, not a single mention. It felt like I had already been edited out of the story before it even began. Still, I moved forward. Pre-surgery appointments, tests, evaluations. At one point, a hospital counselor asked me something that caught me off guard. "Do you feel supported by your family?" I hesitated. Too long. She noticed, but I smiled and said yes, because what was I supposed to say? That I was about to give up part of my body for people who barely saw me? The night before the surgery, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at my phone, at my sister's posts, at the way she was positioning herself as the one holding the family together. Around 11 p.m., my dad called. "You can still back out," he said. "I'm not going to." There was a pause. Then I said something I didn't even realize I'd been holding inside. "Just promise me one thing. Anything. Don't let them erase this." Silence. Then, quietly, "I won't." But the next day, as I was being wheeled into surgery, my sister was already planning how to tell the story, and in her version, I didn't exist.
The morning of the surgery felt unreal. Cold hospital lights, paper gown, an IV in my arm. I arrived early, but my mother and Natalie were already there, sitting together, focused on their phones, barely acknowledging me. Natalie was whispering into hers. "Yes, today's the surgery. I'll post updates later." Post updates. Like this was content. Like this was a campaign. At 6:15 a.m., I was lying on the pre-op bed when my dad was wheeled past me. Our eyes met for a brief second. He mouthed 2 words. "Thank you." That was it. That was the only acknowledgement I got before everything went dark. I woke up hours later in a blur of pain. Sharp, deep, constant. It felt like my body didn't belong to me anymore. I tried to speak, but my throat burned. Machines beeped around me. The room felt empty. Because it was. I was alone. Hours passed. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medication, but no family. Finally, I asked one of them, barely able to speak. "Can someone come?" She hesitated. "They're with your father in ICU." Of course they were. At 9:30 p.m., my mother finally showed up. She stood at the foot of my bed like she was visiting a distant relative. "Your father's stable," she said. Everything went well. I waited. Just one word. One sentence. "Thank you." It never came. "Get some rest," she added, already turning to leave. And just like that, she was gone. But later that night, something unexpected happened. Around 3 a.m., my door opened quietly. A nurse wheeled someone in. My father. He looked weak, pale, still hooked to oxygen, but he insisted on coming. "I needed to see you," he whispered. He grabbed my hand, his voice shaking. "I see you." Those 3 words broke something in me. "I've always seen you," he continued, "and I'm going to fix this." I didn't understand what he meant. But before he left, he said something strange. "Tomorrow, I'm taking care of something." I was too exhausted to ask, too medicated to think. So I let it go. I didn't know that while I was lying there alone, recovering from surgery, my father was already changing everything. Recovery was harder than I expected. Weeks of pain, no income, medical bills piling up. I couldn't even carry groceries without feeling like I'd collapse. And through all of it, no one showed up. Not once. Meanwhile, my sister's fundraiser was everywhere. Social media, news articles, photos of her smiling, shaking hands, holding oversized checks. People calling her incredible, inspiring. The reason her father survived. I stared at one post for a long time. Hundreds of comments praising her. Thousands of likes. And me? I was in the background of one blurry photo. Barely visible. That's when it hit me. She didn't just take credit. She rewrote reality. But 9 weeks later, at a family dinner meant to celebrate recovery, the truth was finally about to surface, and it wouldn't stay hidden anymore.
9 weeks after surgery, I was finally cleared to return to normal life. That same day, my mother texted me, "Family dinner, Sunday, 6 p.m. Be there. No warmth, no gratitude, just instructions." Still, I went. A small part of me hoped maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd acknowledge what happened. The dinner was formal, elegant. A private room filled with relatives. I checked the seating chart. I was near the far end of the table. Of course, as the night went on, I stood quietly, watching Natalie move through the room like the star of the evening, showing people photos from the fundraiser, laughing, soaking in admiration. No one asked me anything. Except one person. My niece. She looked at my collar and asked, "Aunt Ava, what's that scar?" I smiled softly. "I had surgery." She tilted her head. "Mom says you should hide scars at fancy dinners." I didn't respond, but something inside me shifted. Then came the moment. My mother stood up and tapped her glass. "Before we eat," she said, "I want to say a few words." The room went silent. My heart started pounding. This was it, finally. Recognition. Truth. Closure. But instead, she turned toward Natalie, "To my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life." The room erupted in applause. Glasses raised. Cheers. Smiles. All directed at her. I didn't move. I couldn't. It felt like the air had been pulled out of my lungs. Like I had just disappeared completely. I stood up, ready to leave. I couldn't stay there. Not after that, but before I could walk away, my father grabbed my wrist. Tight. Urgent. He slid something toward me. A folded napkin. "Read it," he whispered. Confused, I sat back down. My hands trembling, I opened it under the table, and what I read changed everything. He had transferred control of the company. To me. 51% ownership. He had changed his life insurance. Millions in my name. He had legally made me the decision maker for his care. All of it. Days after the surgery, while I was alone in recovery, I looked up at him. He nodded slightly. Like he was saying, "It's time." For the rest of the dinner, I said nothing. I let them talk. Let them celebrate. Let them believe their version of the story, because now I knew the truth. And I had the power to prove it, but what they didn't know yet was that within weeks, everything they built, their image, their control, their illusion, was about to collapse in front of everyone. The truth didn't explode overnight. It unfolded slowly, like a controlled demolition. First, my mother found out about the life insurance. She called the company to update something and learned she was no longer the beneficiary. Her reaction? Fury, denial, accusations. But it didn't matter. It was legal, final, unchangeable. Then Natalie discovered the bigger truth. The company shares. 51% ownership. Mine. She stormed into my father's office demanding answers. "How could you do this?" she asked. His response was simple. "She gave me a kidney. You threw a party." That's when everything shifted. No more pretending. No more illusions. A few days later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. "Schedule the board meeting," the lawyer said. "Use your authority." So I did.
Walking into that room felt surreal. Executives, board members, my mother, my sister, all seated like nothing had changed, but everything had. I didn't waste time. I laid out the truth: medical records, proof of the transplant, documentation, and then the ethics report, the one showing my mother had tried to stop the surgery, tried to label me unstable, tried to erase me before it even happened. The room went silent, completely silent. Then I said the words that changed everything. I'm exercising my authority as majority shareholder. I removed my mother from her position, immediately. No debate, no negotiation. Then I turned to my sister. Your role is changing. You have 48 hours to decide if you stay or leave. She didn't argue. She couldn't, because for the first time, the truth was louder than the story she created. I walked out of that room without looking back, not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something. I was never invisible. They just chose not to see me. And now, they had no choice. Because when you spend your whole life being overlooked, the moment you finally take your power back doesn't just change your story, it rewrites everyone else's too.
Before you go, if you think this story was shocking, you need to watch this next one, because what happened there was even more unbelievable. Tap the video on your screen right now.